Let's talk to Lord Andrew Adonis, who is, of course, a Labour peer. He's a Remainer, and he would like to see a second vote. Andrew, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We've spoken many, many times. In fact, last time we spoke, some considerable time ago, you reckoned that probably we would have more or less sorted this out and probably realised how stupid we had been long before this. So here we are. We're almost up against the deadline. Nothing has been sorted out. What on earth is going to happen?
Well, what I got wrong was I hadn't realised that Parliament would be paralysed for month after month. What's essentially happened is that Parliament's been paralysed since December when Theresa May agreed her deal, the 39 billion deal, which has basically lost her support on both sides, both those who think we should stay in the EU and those who think we should leave with a hard Brexit. And she's been paralysed since. Remember, she did conduct a vote in Parliament in January, which she lost by 230. But instead of trying to find a way through after that, she behaved like an ostrich. She put her head in the sand. She announced that she was going to try and renegotiate her deal with this thing called the Irish backstop, which of course has proved impossible to renegotiate because no one's prepared to sacrifice Ireland as the price of Brexit. And so, as I say, we've just been paralysed. Now, I don't think that the fundamentals have changed. Her deal isn't going to go through. We are, at the moment, heading for a no-deal Brexit at the end of March. I think what will have to be done to avoid that is an extension of Article 50 so that we just continue as we are in this paralysed state, but at least not leaving the EU at the end of March. And the basic fundamentals, which is that it's a choice between some version of her deal or a referendum, still holds. But the paralysis could continue for some months longer if Theresa May is not prepared to be a leader.
Is Theresa May doing this because she really can't find a way out, or because she's actually thinks that if she pushes it to the wire, that then somebody is going to blink before her and she's going to get what she wants?
It's the second. What she's doing is putting party before country. The only way of getting to a referendum, which I think is going to be the only way of resolving this, will be for her party to split in Parliament. It doesn't mean it necessarily splits for all time, but obviously the right wing, ReesMogg and this group called the ERG, who don't want any compromise at all, they will obviously go mad if she agrees to a referendum. But I think she can carry all of the sensible people in her party and most of the government behind it. But it's going to be an ugly endgame.
Sorry, Andrew.
She doesn't want to do the endgame.
Explain to me, and I just spoke to Tom Brake about this, and, some of my colleagues are staunch Brexiteers on Talk Radio. I happen to be a Remainer. I would, by the way, like to see quite a lot of modernisation of the European Parliament, but then I imagine quite a lot of people would like to see that.
So would I.
Yeah. So what I don't understand is how Jacob Rees-Mogg and Andrew Bridgen and many others, who are reasonably intelligent people, I'm sure, how they seem to think it's going to be perfectly acceptable. And as somebody who lives in Kent myself, we're not going to have huge traffic jams coming up the M20 and trucks stuck all around the port of Dover. They say it's going to be fine. We go to WTO rules and that'll be great.
Well, they don't actually mean that. What they're being is wholly irresponsible because, of course, they're not in having to take responsibility for what happens. So for them, being purist Brexiters, saying that they wouldn't do anything that Theresa May has done in terms of compromise, but not having to take responsibility for it, is the perfect situation. No one's going to make Jacob Rees-Mogg Prime Minister tomorrow. So he's not going to have to deliver on his WTO Brexit, not settling any of our debts with the EU, not agreeing any trade deal, not agreeing any basis on which the ports will operate. He can just say all those things, being a purist, whilst Theresa May is the one who has to make the compromises. I mean, it's the oldest political trick in the book, which is to claim you're against things, knowing that you're never actually going to have to take responsibility. But the real problem at the moment is that in these situations, normally a Prime Minister leads to a solution. What Theresa May has done, though, is literally to behave like the ostrich and put her head in the sand. For 3 months now, when it's been clear that her deal isn't going to go through and that the only way through this is a referendum, what she has done is to pretend that if she goes round and round and round the same circuit, she'll get her deal through. Well, it went down by 230 last time, which is the biggest defeat any government ever suffered in the House of Commons on a major issue, and it will do the same next time. So we're just waiting for Theresa May to do the job she's paid to do, which is be Prime Minister and find a solution to the nation's great crisis.
So who's advising her?
We're paralysed.
Why is that? Why are her advisors not, in that case, putting this to her?
Some are. I mean, it's well known that her deputy, David Lidington, who is a very level-headed guy, has been in support of a referendum for months. Her problem is that she doesn't want to break with ReesMogg and the ERG because she thinks that their retribution will be terrible in terms of attacking her and splitting the Conservative Party. So I'm afraid it's a straightforward case of putting party before country when what she should do in her job is to put country before party.
If there was to be a second vote, which I know, which is what you are actually trying to achieve at the moment, would we allow the British citizens who live in Europe and don't live here at the moment but are citizens and do have the vote normally, I believe, in elections, but they weren't allowed to vote in the referendum, were they?
No, they weren't, and nor were 16 and 17-year-olds who were allowed to vote in the Scottish referendum. I think both groups should be allowed to vote in a future referendum.
Do you think that some of the, we've been talking about Honda and various other people who are now pulling out apparently of this country, but according to Honda, I think it has nothing to do with Brexit. Do you think this is really because they're looking to the future and worrying what sort of economy this country is going to have?
You're completely right. The Japanese are extremely polite, and they always believe it's important for people they're dealing with to save face. So they wouldn't be so impolite as to say that the reason why they're withdrawing from the country is because of the government's policies. But that's clearly true. And indeed, you don't need to speculate that that's true. The European head of Honda a few months ago did meetings in Swindon, which is where their plant is, where he made it very clear and publicly clear that their concerns about Brexit and the whole trade arrangement with the EU, where, of course, they export lots of cars to, is a fundamental concern. Now, once they've taken the decision to disinvest from Britain and to close the factory in Swindon and lose the 3,500 jobs, of course, at that point, they're not going to be so impolite as to say it's the government's fault. But that is the case. And, of course, that's the reason why Nissan, too, in Sunderland, in the northeast of England, also announced that it's going to be scaling back its investment. We're in a really desperate situation here in terms of jobs and trade at the moment, and it's all to do with Brexit.
So why do these guys in the European Research Group in the Conservative Party, I think they're all in the Conservative Party, aren't they? Why do they seem to feel it's going to be okay? I mean, they can't actually not believe what they're saying, surely.
Well, as I said earlier, it's not that they believe what they're saying, because they clearly don't. I mean, Jacob Rees-Mogg, as you say, is an intelligent guy. He doesn't really believe that we can have a no-deal Brexit and not have catastrophe. What they're doing is setting themselves up in opposition to Theresa May for purely opportunist reasons, knowing that they'll never have to take responsibility. That's what's going on at the moment. It's the classic Farage tactic of the last 15 years of saying Brexit, 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 and claiming always to want a more extreme policy than any Conservative Prime Minister will follow, knowing that you can get cheap populist votes. And I'm afraid that's what's happening at the moment. I
was talking to Nigel Farage the other day, and he didn't envisage it would ever go this badly or be this much of a mess.
Of course he would say that. Of course he'd say that, because he doesn't have any responsibility. It's easy for him to say all of the faults are Theresa May's, when actually Theresa May is trying to follow the very policy that Nigel Farage has spent the last 20 years proclaiming. It's a classic case of the revolution devouring its children. Anyone who studied the French Revolution or the Russian Revolution knows that we're going through that phase at the moment where the moderates, who very, very stupidly allowed themselves to get led down the revolutionary road, are the ones who get eaten alive. David Cameron was eaten alive, George Osborne, Nick Clegg, now we're on to Theresa May. We will not end this crisis until Brexit as a policy is stopped, and that is the reason why we're going to need a second referendum.